Hello, ladies. How are you today? Do you think same-sex couples are okay or not?
I think they're perfectly fine. Love is love.
Get out of here with that shit.
Okay.
It's absolutely okay.
It's none of my business.
I want people to be straight, like opposite sex, or just they got to lay off of the drugs and alcohol, the X-rated porn.
Are you straight? Are you gay?
I'm straight.
I'm straight.
So you're straight also too then?
I'm straighter than a banana.
Okay. Well, a banana's not very straight. What would you consider yourself?
I guess they say like the technical term for it is bisexual or pansexual.
The majority of people seem to be okay with it, which is, I view to be wrong. But a lot of them are themselves straight, but like as we see in this last girl, she's bi.
I just like people, but I don't prefer to have a name for it. I'm just free with it.
I wouldn't call it a righteous city, but at the same time, I think it's better than Sodom. It's not like we have people pressing men, to have sex with them.
I'm not going to bind myself to any kind of, label.
Probably. To be determined. Yeah, to be determined, probably.
Well, I consider it to be wrong and contrary to the laws of God. Something we'll be judged for. But we are planning a discussion and or debate about that right here, right in this section around 2:30, and you're welcome to join us, and thank you for your comment. Thank you.
Won't be there. Happy to
Well, you're...
Have a nice day.
I'm not interested, thanks.
What are you eating there?
Salad.
Okay. Nice talking to you. Hello, sir. Can we...
Would not be nice talking to you. Go the fuck away.
Okay.
My only thing where, personally, I think it goes too far is whenever people who don't condone it, they feel like it's their place to step in and change someone for how they are and stuff like that. That's where it's like, that's not your place to do that. Let them live their life. You can believe whatever you want to believe, just like anybody at Washington Square Park can believe whatever they want to believe. Just, that's what my problem is.
I view that, yes, I should not force people against their will to change.
Right, so like that therapy
but if I
stuff?
can persuade you through my words that there's a judgment day coming
Right.
for living in that lifestyle,
Right.
and if through my words I can persuade you to change from that lifestyle,
Right.
then I would view that to be good. Would you agree? We're to avoid sexual immorality. Hi, Hezekiah Israel here again with my friends Angel, Max, and Eli. And we are picking up from the prior video in which we are discussing, first of all, does God exist or does he not? Secondly, if God does exist, does he judge or did he just create everything and then everything is what it is? And then thirdly, we are talking about the issue of same-sex couples. Is that okay or is that wrong? And where we left off was my argument from yesterday is that anything that has design, fashion, or form, or reason, or intelligence, such as, we were looking at a lampstand, for example, and that was created. If it's got a function, it's got a purpose, someone had to have made it, okay? And so because we can see that these things have function and design, someone had to have made that, and my argument is that when we look at people, when we look at trees, when we look at the plethora of things here in the earth, that is evidence that God exists. And we had some responses from Angel, from Max, and Eli yesterday, and I'm picking back up on the response from Eli. Eli's response was that we see things in nature that do have form and design and show intelligence, but have somewhat of a evil or disease or disorder effect to them, such as in the coronavirus or things that we see that don't appear to be in order. And so his view was that maybe why would God have made that? And so why would that be if God exists and he's perfect in everything he does? Why would that be? And so I wanted to respond to that, Eli.
I think that was my point. I think you missed his argument a little bit.
Okay, that seemed to be what that was to me. But why don't you briefly, for the sake of time, go on that?
So my point, my point was less about like if something's bad or good, because I think like if there was a God, I think that like he would pretty good chance he would create bad and good things, because our world is filled with bad and good things. But my point was more that like we see with the coronavirus, like constant evolution. Like we see from person to person that the protein code and the RNA changes pretty much every time it spreads because of its replication process, because of evolution, and it like it's a microcosm of how I believe humans and other things with function grew up and rose. It's by changes in evolution, changes in DNA, that when the DNA exhibits traits that are more beneficial to survival, such as with the coronavirus, with like the Delta variant spreading more, then that wins out and becomes the more dominant population. And over millions of years, that's how you get things like humans.
Okay, so my response to that, first of all, anytime we see disorder takes its name from order. So if you didn't have order to begin with, you wouldn't have disorder, because disorder takes its root from order. I believe God made everything perfect in all he does, okay? However, whenever there is disorder creates other disorder, to where we get to a point where we don't always see why God made what he made. So, for example, it could be that I could have told a bird, hey, I could talk to this bird, hey, go get me an apple from the tree, and the bird normally would do it. But now, because of disorder, the birds see me kill other animals. They don't always follow in order, because that disorder that has now been created on account of fear, they don't do what they were intended to do. And this is why we see things, disorder in this world. Now, if we take the coronavirus, for example, the coronavirus started in a seafood market in Wuhan, China, right? Some people say it was from eating bats, okay? And I hold that there's minimum commandments of God that we have to keep, that when we break them, it opens up our bodies to demons that then bring sicknesses and diseases upon the body. So when we have the disobedience of God's commandments, we don't always see why God did what he did, because of all the disorder and all the problems. But in the age of peace, when the Messiah returns, like it says in the prophet Isaiah, the lion will one day eat grass just like the cow. Their cubs and their calves will play together, and the lion will dwell with the lamb. And so in the age of peace, like Isaiah says, when that Messiah returns, then we'll understand, that's why that was that way. That's why that was that way. And my response to secondly, my response to the coronavirus changing, well, you don't see evolution in people. Yes, you can see it in diseases and in sicknesses, where these things change in order to adapt to, well, why? Because the underlying problem, I believe, is that you're breaking the commandments of God. And so these things are going to adapt, and are going to continue to be a growing problem until you deal with the underlying cause of what is that? Don't engage in sexual immorality. Don't eat meat. Don't eat blood. Don't break God's minimum commandments. But, Eli, while these diseases may adapt, it doesn't prove evolution for me, because I see people aren't changing. Now, if I could see a monkey go from a person, okay, a fossil of a monkey does not prove evolution because it's a dead fossil. It's not changing. But if I could see the change, if I could see a change from a monkey to a person, then I can agree with your argument that people can change, but I don't see that in nature.
Do you know what a vestigial organ is? It's different organs found in humans that are not necessary anymore. They once were necessary for like our ancestral species, but now they still like wisdom teeth. We don't use wisdom teeth most of the time. They end up just being like painful. But our ancestors, when they had like wider jaws, you know, and more teeth so that they could like eat more, they needed these teeth. But they still exist in us. You know, we have organs that we don't necessarily use. Our appendix, I think, is one of them, and it's not functional. But it was at one point functional for our ancestors. So to say that you can't see evolution in humans, it's a little bit dishonest.
Jenny, you need to make a comment? Or?
Well, I just wanted to... so when you were talking about, like, the disorder thing, right, and talking about how you would be able to, like, tell, like, the bird, like, to get you an apple, and normally it would do that, like, do you... I kind of got a little confused by that. Like, would the bird be understanding English, or would it be like a mental thing that you tell the bird to do that, and then the bird understands because let's say if you were in Egypt, and let's say everything was in order in Egypt. I know this is a hypothetical, so it doesn't necessarily make a point, but like, if you were in Egypt and everything was in order in Egypt, and then you told the bird to go get you the apple, but it was in English, and the bird only spoke like Arabic, like, would it not understand you then? Like, that was a thing that I've ran into a little bit of trouble with, I guess.
So I guess my question is, like, if you're kind of conceding to a point that like the coronavirus evolution like is evolution, first off, why, like, how, like, God, obviously God, if God created everything, he would have also allowed for evolution to occur with like viruses and things that aren't human. But why do you think evolution would occur in those things but not in humans? And then my second question is, like, how do you account for genetic differences, even like between the four of us? If we now have the science to like sequence our genomes and see the DNA that like underlines all of our traits, how do you account for the differences in that DNA? Do you think that like God, the creator, individually outlined each of our DNA to like go to our traits, or if that was left up to random chance by him, or what explains our differences and what explains our individual genetic sequences?
Okay, so I would so I would say, quoting from the philosopher Plato, okay, it is visible and palpable, and corporeal, but it is evident that all things which are of this sort have been made. So in other words, Plato's saying, if it's visible, if it's tangible, it's clear that all these things have been made. But what has been made has doubtless an author by whom it was made. This maker and father of all, however, it is difficult to discover, and when discovered, it is impossible to declare him to the vulgar. So, when I see people, there's an overwhelming evidence of so many amazing things going on in the body. I mean, you have so many intricate parts. You have so many, your teeth and the way. And I know, Angel, you talked about teeth.
That's crazy. That's like an exercise.
I know. I mean, just so many things that you can do, and then it's like your mind knew exactly what to tell your body and what muscles to move to do.
Right, left leg,
I mean, it's just so, and man can try to make these things in a robot, but it's still not as good as we are, and so on Angel's view on the wisdom teeth, again, I did have my wisdom teeth pulled, but I regret that now, because at the time I wasn't thinking, well, if God is perfect in all he does, he obviously put them there for some righteous purpose. But it could be that there's something that we're eating or doing today that is causing the disorder of that pain, because I hold that God did everything perfect, but could be, Angel, that there's some type of a disorderly thing that I'm doing, either in something I'm eating or something I'm drinking or something that I'm doing that is then in turn creating that effect on me. But I don't view that God's to blame for that. That I or whoever is sinning would be to blame. But let's do this. We need to kind of move on here. So let's wrap up with that. Now, if we can't all agree, I hold, based on this evidence of what I see in nature, similar to what Plato said, that there must be a creator. So let's at least assume for the moment, even if you guys don't fully agree on that, let's assume that there is a God and he does exist, okay? And let's go on to the next topic, and that topic would be, if God exists. Now, I have my reason, but I want to hear your thoughts. Would God just create and then that's it, and whatever happens, happens? Or is there going to be a specific judgment point where God will deal with every person individually according to how they live to show that he's a just God? What's your view, Angel?
Well, assuming there was a creator, my bet would be that it's probably not one of the religions that exist today. It'd probably be I don't know, I think it's silly to assume that we have the answer for the creator of the universe. So I don't know. Again, I wouldn't pretend to know that I know who God is and what he sees as just is, so I'm not in a position to say, honestly.
Okay, fair enough.
I have a personal belief that God, let's say if there was a creator, right? God created all of us. It's kind of like The Sims, the video game The Sims. It's basically it's a little video game where you make these people, and they're little random people, and they speak a funny language. They're flarbin, glarbin, whatever. That's how they talk. But you can kind of control these little a couple of the little people, and then you go around, but you're you can build their house, and you can make them swim, and then just delete the ladder in the pool, and they won't know how to get out. They have to use the ladder to get out, and then you can they'll die, and then but then you could read in the news probably, I guarantee there's 8 stories in the news about someone got in the pool and then forgot how to get out of the pool, and then they drowned or something like that. So I feel God, it's kind of like The Sims, where he'll create. He made, if there was a creator, he made everything, and then he's kind of I just wonder what happens. And then, the Judgment Day part, I also take issue with a little bit, just because, I don't know, right now there's almost 8 billion people on the planet alive, and I don't know, they just found some skull of an ancestor of humans that was from 300,000 years ago or something. So there would be a lot of people, or at least, relatives of humans, and I don't know if God's judging the animals. I mean, he told Noah to take 2 of every animal, so maybe he wants to judge those guys too, right? So, and like, I don't know if have you ever worked in like customer service or like worked with people just like on like regularly? Like, it's not necessarily the most fun thing, and like a lot of people are just very like obnoxious, I would say. And that's not the fault of them. That's, I just get annoyed and frustrated when people are like can't take, easy instructions, or like they keep asking you the same question or like something like that. So I just feel like if God had to sit through fucking like 11 trillion people or whatever, and that's just till now. Like in 100 years, it's gonna be like double that or some shit. I don't even know. He would get like so frustrated by like the 4th person that he would like not. He would be like, all right, I can't do the rest of this, or maybe his angels would help. I don't know, something like that. But that's how I feel.
Yeah, I think if we put it as a given that there is a God, that there is a creator, first off, I don't necessarily believe that there would be like some kind of judgment day where he flips back through your whole life and goes, oh, what did you eat on this day, or you had sex with this person, so you're a bad person, this and that. I think it would be, like, I would give that. I think if there is a creator, there is a decent chance that there would be some kind of moment where they try and evaluate your life, or try and evaluate, like if we're taking it as a given that there is that moment to decide either heaven or hell or whatever it is. I don't think that the creator of this world would do that based on like an arbitrary set of rules, or just on like, oh, did you do this, do that. I think, or even like, did you believe in me? I think it would be more of a sense of, did you live a good life? Were you a nice person relatively? Did you treat people well? And I actually think it's like a hallmark. I think God would almost more prefer people, not that people acted good because of him, and not that they didn't do these things because this moment was going to come, and that like they did all these good things so they could get into heaven, but that they did all these good things in spite of not believing in him, and that they like acted in accordance with like dignity and kindness and like treated people well, even though they didn't believe that there was some benevolent figure watching everything they did.
Okay. I'll give my view, and then what we'll do is I will let each person provide a brief response to whoever said what, whether it was something I said or Max or Eli or Angel, and then I'll do a final wrap up and we'll go into the next segment. So my view on this is that if we are made in God's image and we like to see justice, people get upset if they're wronged. They feel that they've been hurt. They like to see justice done. They like to see other people treated right. That's a natural thing that we feel. And so my view would be that if I was made in the image of God and God gave me that feeling, then that feeling comes from somewhere. And obviously I would view that comes from him. And so if I like to see justice and goodness done in the world, then I would hold that God is also good and just because I'm made in his image. And if God is just, the way I know there is a judgment day coming is this. I see injustices in this world. Sometimes people get murdered. Sometimes the murderers get away with it. Other times people live very frugally so that they don't steal and they treat other people right, and then they die in remote areas of the world and never get a burial. Other people live very extravagant lifestyles, spend millions and millions of dollars on stuff and do it at the expense of others and stealing and cheating people, and then sometimes these people are politicians even and die with honorable burials. Okay, so if God was a just God, which I hold him to be, because I see these injustices that occur in the world, that's how I know there must be a judgment day that is outside of this world, where everyone will be judged according to how they live. And so that's why I believe there is a judgment day coming, because I like to see I like to see justice, and I hold God to be just likewise. And so that's how I know there's a judgment day coming. Angel, you want to respond?
Sure. Yeah, I kind of feel like you're using that to like justify religion to yourself almost, like because these bad things occur, and like a lot of the times like no one ever pays the price for their wrongdoings. Like there has to be something outside of it. I don't know. I think sometimes you have to admit that like shit people exist, and sometimes they get away with doing bad things because, you know, frankly, the earth sucks most of the time. The people here, most of them suck, you know, most of them are not nice. And so it's cool to like want to believe that, yeah, they'll get their day one day. But I just don't see it that way, honestly.
Yeah, I mean, like, I had a professor that taught like political theology, right? And so when we were talking about like the golden calf, right, which is like people who have idolized this calf instead of God, and they're like partying and they're having fun and they're like dancing around the calf, and then there's like the people who like worship God, right, who live like this very kind of strict life and things like that in service of him and stuff like that, which obviously is rewarding internally to these people. But like for me, I was just like, basically my professor said, you know, when I heard like the 10 Commandments, you know, from Moses, and then I saw like what the people that were worshiping the calf were doing, I was like, I'm a golden calf kind of guy, you know. He was like, fuck Yahweh or whatever. And so obviously not in a very he was in a joking manner, but he was like, I like this calf, you know. He's like, I want to party all day. And basically the reason I say that is I think you can live your life in a way that is honest and true to yourself, in a way that you know, and you can cross these I feel like, you know, you can cross these lines and things like that to find where you are, I guess, not like you can't cross every line and stuff, but like, you know, there's certain transgressions that teach you, you know, what you're comfortable with doing, whether or not you want to be like a more reserved person and you don't talk out, you know, you don't really talk in class, for example, or like someone who's a class clown who's always shouting about stuff. And that creates like a community and an environment. But it's like, if everyone were to strictly follow these rules and things like that, we would have a very uniform kind of society. I feel like everyone would kind of be very similar, and you wouldn't have the like diversity that I think makes like Washington Square Park is so cool because there's like all this crazy stuff going on, right? Like other parks, there's like swings, and so I guess with that, I also kind of agree with Angel in some sense of like, it seems that the Judgment Day is like you're saying that there's evidence of Judgment Day because God is just and people are unjust, but what if instead it's like I don't know anything about God, right? So to me, it seems like God's just like kind of here for the fun of it, right? It seems like he's like, this is a crazy fucking party, and some people are gonna die and get bombed, and some people that kill and bomb people are gonna get really rich, and then sometimes it'll be the opposite, and I don't know. It's just there's so much going on in the world that it's like I can't imagine there's one person just being like, all right, I'm controlling all of this. I guess that's my piece.
Yeah, so I guess just back to the point of like the evidence that God is just, being that that we are created in God's image and we have a knack for justice. I guess if every human is created in God's image, and thus every human is a reflection of God's principles and God's morality, you would then also have to extrapolate that, you know, my sense of justice is shared by God, but God also then created like Jeffrey Epstein, who like preyed on like 12 and 13-year-old girls. And if he was created in God's image, then that would reflect that God is a pedophile. Or if the people that are extraordinarily wealthy off of bombing, like Max said, or that you talked about, who get these elegant burials after being horrible people, they were also created in God's image. And so that would have to then reflect back onto God. So God could share my sense of justice, but he would also share other people's.
Eli, you mentioned
People who bomb people, and then
people who
as
bomb
Hezekiah
people.
said earlier, people who do these horrible things, they bomb people, they get all this money, they still get the honorable burial. So I was just saying that would be God's image if we're all made in God's image.
Right. So my view, I understand where he's coming from with that. My view would be this, though. If God made us in such a way that we could only be good, I believe God is good and just, and if God made us that way where we could only be that way, then we really wouldn't be good because we were made that way. We'd be like a robot. We'd be like a computer. When I press the T, it does exactly the T. When I press the H, it does exactly the H. And I wouldn't really love my computer because my computer just does what I tell it to out of necessity. But I have a cat. My cat sometimes growls at me. Sometimes it hisses at me. But then other times it jumps up on me and it purrs on me and it cuddles on me to show that it really loves me. And I love my cat because at times my cat of its own free will shows that it loves me. Now, that, Eli, is why I believe God allows evil people to live in this world. I believe God made this world for the both good and evil people, for the present state of men. Okay, and gave this world to the prince of darkness, to the evil. Why? Because God is good to good and evil. Now, it doesn't mean he wants you to live evil. Okay, and the evil is only temporary. Living a lifestyle of evil is only temporal. Okay, in order for it to be made manifest who you were, because Eli, if God cut off Epstein before he could do the act, or if God cut off the mass murderer before he could start it, then God really wouldn't be just in judging that person as evil because they never had the opportunity to do it. Okay? And so it had to be made manifest who you are. Who are you? Are you evil or are you good? But then God will, at the end of the age, when everyone has had the opportunity to live out their life and be made manifest who they are, he will then divide those who are good, and they will get to live with God, where then they will get to see God. And that's my desire, is to see God. Or they will be judged. Okay? Now, I'm going to let you briefly respond to that, unless some of you guys... Okay.
Just like the point I was trying to make was not like why is there good or bad or anything, but my thing is that like you used your own internal sense of justice as evidence for why God is just, correct?
Yes.
That because you have a sense of justice and you're created in God's image, God is just, correct?
Yes.
So let's say you were Epstein. I don't want to say you were Epstein because you're not. But let's say you're this, because you acknowledge that there's evil in the world and that God allows evil people to be there. But would those evil people...
By the way, do we all agree that evil does exist in this world?
Yes.
We do.
Like as a force, or like...
Yeah,
I guess, how would you like to describe evil?
Yeah.
There's good and evil actions. Not every...
As a distinction, yes.
Like, are there
when
demons?
People say like there's evil in this world. That's it's like a demon.
Yeah. I just want to finish but
Go ahead.
would you acknowledge then that if, like the point I was trying to make is that under that logic, Epstein would be created in God's image, correct?
Right.
And Epstein would be evil.
Right.
does that mean God is evil?
But do we agree though that justice is a good attribute?
I'm not.
Do we agree that justice is a good attribute of a person?
I think it depends on the kind of justice, but I don't think it has to do with if it's good or. I'm just like would.
Yeah.
If we're using our own internal, if we're saying that I believe in justice, so God believes in justice because humans and God are the same, then the evil in humans also has to reflect back onto God. Right. And I think, like, is it your perception that God is also evil, or like is he both just and evil?
I would hold that that the good attributes of man can be attributed to God.
But none of the bad.
But if evil could be attributed to God, then who would be the lover of men? If God is not, if God wouldn't, if God isn't just, who do we have to look to for justice and for peace? And so I would give the good attributes of man to show evidence that that's how God is, but the bad evidence, the bad things I would attribute to simply on account of free will and choosing evil.
I would just say I think that's like pretty selective to just say that the good things come from God and the bad things just come out of free will. I think like that's only said to just say, oh, like we have this perfect God, so I'm going to say that. But like if, as you said, humans were created in the image of God, it's not humans were created in the image of God and then other bad things were added as well. I thought it would just be that humans are created in the full image of God, and that kind of explains it all. But
okay, but if I could attribute every feeling to God and therefore claim that God is also evil, who would I? What would be the barrier? Why should men even live righteously? Why not just live as a thief and kill? And because if I have no one to look to for justice, okay, and then there's a certain happiness that you get. You know, you can't really be happy. My view is you can't really be happy unless you love God and keep His commandments, because when you treat other people the way you want to be treated, that makes you happy. It makes you happy. When you get up and work for a living, it makes you happy. There's a certain joy that you get through the work. But when you're a bum and you're always begging from people, yeah, you might be able to milk something from society, but it doesn't make you happy. At the end of the day, you feel like, oh, I wasted my day, I wasted my life. It's just there's a happiness that you get, and so I'm sorry, Eli, I just can't attribute those things to God, because then I wouldn't have the one to look to for that justice. So I would hold that God is perfect in all He does, and He's just, but I can respect your view, but I just, like I said, we got to have someone we can look to for justice because of the injustices.
I've spoken a lot, so maybe Angel and Max.
Yeah, I just want to add something. I just want to bring back something Eli said that I found interesting and that I hold, that I believe. I think when people do good things, regardless of their beliefs, just because they're good people, I actually see them as better individuals than people who act good because they're in fear of eternal damnation. I think you should be able to be a good person because you're a good person and not because someone is forcing you to do so. Yeah.
Did you want to comment next?
Yeah, I did. Yeah, my thing with that is, like, I personally don't have really any inclination to like murder or like, I don't know, like yeah, I'd steal stuff or like bomb a country or whatever. Like, that's just not really within me. but I also have not had the sort of commandments of God instilled into me. Like I could not list off all the 10 commandments or whatever. And so I feel like.
But you grew up traditionally Jewish, though, right?
No, I actually didn't.
You did.
Well, I'm Jewish by by blood. Like my mom's Jewish. She was bat mitzvahed. I never got bar mitzvahed. I don't know a lick of Hebrew.
She was bat.
Yeah, she was bat mitzvahed. Yeah, I thought that's what I said. And so yeah, I'm not really like, never bar mitzvahed, never really went to like temple, nothing like that. And I feel like I'm still like a decent. I was actually kind of like Angel, but I feel like I was atheist but it was like when I was like a staunch atheist. I was atheist in the way that I now dislike, which is like I was imposing my like beliefs on others, like it was almost like a religion for me. And now I'm just like, I have no idea, and whatever happens, like, yeah.
I guess I just wanted to talk, a second, just to the point you're making about how you can live without God in such an unjust world, and also the point of like the homeless people, whatever. But I think me, Max, and Angel, maybe not Max, but no, are a good example of people who don't necessarily believe in God, but still find a way to live like a pretty moral, productive life. Sorry, Max. No, kidding. Max is very no. Max is one of the hardest workers I know. But I guess I think it's one of the most difficult things about being a human, especially a human who doesn't believe in God, is that you truly do have to grapple with the evil of this world, and to grapple with the fact that great things are happening, but there's also horrible things going on constantly. And I think it can be comforting and easy and provide happiness to be able to think that at the end there is going to be a judgment day or a God who will bring back order from this disorder and allow justice to happen. But I personally, at least my personal belief, is that it's our lifelong journey to experience the pain and suffering that comes with being a human, that comes with being in this world, and to find different ways. I think everyone has their own way of coping with that, whether it be, friends and family and love, or drugs, or video games, or pizza, whatever it is. I think that's one of the beauties about life is having your own individual journey to constantly deal with the cruelty and suffering of this world.
Okay, and then I'll just say this and close briefly to Eli's response on the pain and suffering. Okay, I view that whatever brings and establishes peace is part of the law of God, both within the body and within our soul. Now, the suffering or the disease or the pain that we go through is on account of breaking some type of God's commandments. Now, it might not be you that broke the commandment. It could be that someone shot you or someone committed, but there still was a commandment of God that was broken. So either you or someone broke God's commandment, which brought upon suffering to you or to within yourself, okay? And so I hold that we have to love God and keep his commandments in order to enter heaven. But as I've learned of Peter in writings attributed to him, because God pities those who love him, he often causes them to suffer here for their sins so they could still enter life. And because Satan knows this, not because he doesn't fear or love God, but because he gets a certain gratification out of punishing people for their sin, he tries to drive away from us the love of God by getting us to hold one equal to God, one higher than God, to think God doesn't exist, or to harbor ill feelings against God, because then he can drive away from us the love of God. But as long as we love God and keep and are in a relatively pious standard of living. In other words, as long as we are living a relatively righteous life and we love God, hence Jesus said, unless your righteousness exceeds the scribes and Pharisees, you won't enter into the kingdom of heaven. In other words, as long as your righteousness is to a certain level and you love God, God may cause you to suffer here for your sins so that you could still enter life. And that's why I believe we see sometimes some of these sufferings that happen in our life, Eli. But whenever we're going through those, we should seek God more and learn to fix our own problems more and never blame Him for it. Because if we don't blaspheme Him through it, and we honor Him through it, and we remain thankful to Him for our life and for all He's done for us, I believe that these sicknesses and problems and diseases that come upon us then become as our patient endurance through them becomes a cleansing of our sin. Okay, as long as we love God and keep His commandments. But I really think that we should probably wrap it up there. Yeah, and then let's move on to the next topic. Thank you all for joining us. We're going to move on to our next topic. Give thanks to God for it, because if sex wasn't enjoyable, I wouldn't be here, because my parents probably would not have taken it on.
I just wanted to mention that the male G-spot is in the ass, and I feel like...
What do you mean by G-spot? As a brother, right. I tell you I love you, I give you a kiss on the cheek.
Kiss on the cheek. Yeah.
Okay? But if I'm lusting after you,